I have like an entire cabinet of like Christmas cups.
That's the connection right there, Rose.
I think so. This didn't do it the last time.
Yeah, like I said, I have to punch in all that information ahead of time, so
Of
I
coffee.
think we're cooking now. There we go.
Morning, David. Morning.
Yeah, we're good.
So we're live streaming and then she said to record it. So sorry. I just do that. quick. Be gentle. I haven't done this in a while.
Thank God it's you and not me.
Good job.
Yeah, I mean, oh boy.
Everybody. Thank you, Jason.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Audit and Finance Committee meeting of the CCIDA, CREDC, and CRC with the BWB Building, 201 West 3rd Street, Jamestown, New York. We're also streaming live via YouTube and Zoom. It's February the 10th at 9:03. We'll go ahead and start with roll call. Gary Henry's here, Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Here.
We'll move into the minutes. And so we already received the minutes from the March 19th meeting and had a chance to review those. Do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Minutes have been approved. Then we'll move right into new business, discussing the audit for the 2024 financials.
All right, so you got two documents in front of you. We'll run through the PowerPoint, but or the presentation, but it's not a whole lot's changed. So mostly we're hoping to kind of discuss what we can do with you guys. So, talking about the audit, there's certain responsibilities under accounting standards. That's on page 3. What we're here to do, and ultimately we're here to provide an opinion on your financial statements, whether they're in accordance with GAAP. It's not a fraud audit. If you were to come across fraud, we would obviously act on it. But that's not what the purpose of our audit is here for. It's just to make sure you're not out of compliance or you're free of material misstatements. So that's really what we're here to do. And then obviously if we were to come across anything, it doesn't have to be fraud. If it's anything that we thought would be a finding or anything that would be significant enough to we communicate it to this group. Under auditing standards, government auditing standards, we do have to look at your internal control processes, and we do have to perform tests of compliance with laws and regulations. So this is really where findings may be developed or come across. That's usually on the internal control side or compliance. And as you're technically a government entity, you fall under government auditing standards. So we do have to complete that audit. And, we will look at your internal control structure, which we do every year. We'll talk about where the checks and balances are and make sure we think things are operating effectively. And if something were to happen, you would catch it. And then we also, perform a test of compliance. So if there's specific rules that you're supposed to follow, we will look at that. The uniform guidance is, kind of another level of that, but on the federal money specifically. So we're going to look at your federal grants that you receive. We're going to test them for compliance with the laws and regulations, but also look at the internal controls related to those programs to make sure they're operating effectively. Historically, we'll look at your loan funds because those are federally derived. LTEC was defederalized now, but you do have the other federal group. So we look at that every year, just such a major component of your federal monies. We just kind of have to look at it. But, we're going to look at the other monies you got and see if any of those need to be tested for single audit purposes. So we need to kind of dig into some of those revenue streams and see, I think I saw an EPA brownfield, that probably federal money, whether you've spent enough of it yet that we'd have to look into it, maybe not. But, I did notice that on your book.
And I was going to mention, last year, we spent a lot of time because you received a significant amount of federal dollars from the county. And we had a lot of discussions with the county on, what was the basis of those funds? Were you a subrecipient or were you a contractor? And
You're talking about the ARPA.
funds. And ultimately, after discussions with the county, we determined that you were more of a contractor than a subrecipient. And so those actually did not fall to your schedule of federal awards. They were reported on the county's schedule of federal awards. So it means, you have agreements and contractual documents that you have to follow, but you're not under the auspice of the federal government.
So then, we do look at fraud, page 6, we do talk about fraud. We have fraud discussions with your team. We look at your internal control. And this kind of discusses each of our responsibilities, whether it's management, the audit committee or ours. So we are going to look at those internal controls and follow those discussions along. And, if anything arises, yeah, like I mentioned, it's not a fraud audit, but we would follow up on that. But, generally, that's not what we're looking for here. So just as a reminder. Then audit materiality, this is kind of, sometimes some people, they see us come in and they think we look at every penny, and it's not really. We develop what we call materiality, and it has quantitative and qualitative factors that go into it, but from the dollar numbers, how big we're talking the entity is, or the internal control structure. That also impacts what we think the materiality level should be. And, we develop what we call the materiality thresholds, performance materiality, and we will look at things that are over that amount. If something's under that amount, it would be deemed immaterial to your financials. So that goes into the financial statement reporting as a whole, risk of material misstatement. Well, anything under that number wouldn't be a material misstatement. So there could be, differences that we come across throughout the audit. You may report those as what we call an audit difference. So we do have some of that here that I think we generally report, but, we deem those to not be material to your financials. A material misstatement would, we'd have to talk to you about, and we'd probably have to adjust your numbers or work with you on how to get to be free of material misstatement in your financials.
Yeah, I usually think of materiality as what's a material misstatement? It's basically if the correction wasn't made, the user of the financial statements would probably have a different opinion of the entity had it been made. So that's really kind of like what it means. And you might say, well, geez, that could be a big number. Well, it could be a big number, but it could be a really small number too. If an entity, for instance, had a loan covenant in place that said your debt coverage ratio had to be a certain percentage, and you were just barely over it, and there was an adjustment that was really relatively insignificant, but it changed it from being in compliance versus being out of compliance. Well, that would be material, even though you would think the amount is negligible and it really wouldn't have that much of a basis for the reader, but in that instance, it would, because there's something in place that requires it to be a certain way, and that little change would make a big difference.
So then factors influencing the evaluations on page 9, qualitative and quantitative factors, like you mentioned, a qualitative factor. Yes, it'd be immaterial number, but it could be material in terms of what it could mean for your compliance. The economic climate, monitoring trends. We look at your, the management's financial expertise as well as the audit committee, and make sure that doesn't have an impact on what we deem to be, an internal control issue or anything like that. We have faith that you guys have the ability to review the financials and have any questions that would arise if, we didn't catch something. You have to think about that. Also, there's, you've got your loan funds. They're pretty significant. Those factor into what we look at for your funds. GASB 101, so that's a new GASB. We bring up any of the new GASBs here when they come across, and that's on compensated absences. So that's your vacation and sick time accruals. They added some new accounting for that. Not a big change for you probably, but some entities do have a lot of those balances. It's going to be a big fee for it. Unusual transactions or new events. So this is kind of where we might open it up at when I'm done here. But, I noticed the EPA brownfield. I noticed, you had a new wells agreement that looked pretty large that came in last spring. So there were some things that, we'll look at. We'll definitely get substantiation, backup documentation for, and try to make sure we understand. And then, just the going through the financials, the disclosures, everything that goes into putting together the financial statements, we're gonna look at. Make sure that, everything seems to be in place. So yeah, of the big things going on, I think we saw the solar fields, we saw some monies come in, but those, I think we're kind of operating more on we don't have big receipts for those, that when they pay, we're recognizing it. The old agreements, there's still a few out there at Phoenix, I think that's something, and it looks like Wells had a new one. Okay. Is that the ice cream place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phase 3.
Yeah, so this is their.
Well, Mark, they had two new ones, Justin. So we had one that closed early in the year, and then there was one that closed in December as well. So they originally were doing 250 million. It ended up being almost $500 million, right, Mark?
Yep, 250 and then 175.
Yep.
Plus the first one was 87.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we saw maybe close to in the March one, like 600,000, something like that of revenue.
300. I think
yeah.
it was 3, then the other one's 3 as well.
No,
That's right.
so we'll get the agreements on that, make sure we're accounting for it right. I think in the past, historically, we've booked some of that as accounts receivable and only recognized each of the years as they happen.
Yep.
So we'll wanna.
Well, Justin, so the revenue recognition policy that we put together with Dave and you a long time ago said we would only recognize it when we receive the money unless the project had substantially started with construction. So like the wind farms, we had Ball Hill was actually the first wind farm we approved, but it was the last one to get built. So we only recognized that money as it came in until they actually built it, then we recognize the rest. So that's what the revenue recognition policy says. That, you recognize it once the project is started and it's going to happen. And so that's the rest that's what we're following now.
So both phase 2 and phase 3 of that have been kind of under construction. They're
They're rolling. Let me tell you, the
Oh, yeah.
steel is up on the second floor. That was
Yeah.
phase 3. And they're not wasting any time up there. It's amazing what they've done up there. It's just amazing.
Nice.
And so that's kind of just going over your numbers. That's the big thing we saw. It looks like there's a lot of activity, kind of spending down the ARPA funds that you deferred.
Yep.
But, looking through the general ledger that we got last week, it looked like so far everything's balancing, the revenues equals the expenditures is being pulled out of deferred revenue, which is how we want to see it. So I feel pretty good about that. And then, so the EPA brownfield, what is the story?
Well, Justin,
there?
before you get to EPA, Kayla can explain that. I just wanted to talk a bit about ConnectGen.
Okay,
There was an example of where our fee was extremely large, but we only recognized the portion of it that was due, that we received, and then there was a portion that was due on February 15th that we recognized as well, because we extended the date for them a little bit on that second payment. But I think there's over $1 million in fees there that we have not recognized yet because they have not started construction. So that will be one I'm sure you'll look at and see, but they're going to start in earnest in the spring.
yeah, Dave actually asked about that before he came in. He's like, I was expecting to see a big number from that. And then we looked into the GL and it was, well, no, it's Wells agreement. That's the big number. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we're spreading some of those payments, those fees out over time too. So we're not always recognizing all of it.
well, no, Mark, the revenue recognition has nothing to do with the payment stream. So
Okay,
we recognize the revenue when the project is substantially started. So for a lot of the smaller ones, it's when you get the check because they
Yeah.
start the next week. But for these big ones, like I said, Ball Hill went 3 or 4 years where we only recognized the payments they made every year because they hadn't started construction. And that's the same thing with ConnectGen. They plan to start in earnest in the spring. So once they start, it's 1,100 acres of solar panels. So we'll know when they start, trust me. And that's when we'll recognize the rest of that fee.
And it'll be a receivable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
okay.
As
Then
Mark
the
says,
payments
spread
come in, it
out
just
over
offsets
5
the
6
receivable.
years.
Spread out over 5 years. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So the EPA, actually, Mark might be able to elaborate more on this, but it's an RLF, so we're receiving funds from the EPA and we have Stell, right?
Yep, Stell, 300 some thousand.
So we're essentially the pass through, just like a lot of the ARPA funds. And it's a loan fund. And what is their 2% is their
Yeah.
interest rate and I don't,
And there's no sort of limit to how much you can lend. Like if we had one deal that was $600,000, we could just lend it all to one person. And it has to be used for environmental remediation related activities.
Gotcha.
The hope is that we can not only keep turning that over, but then once we demonstrate that we know what we're doing, we're able to get the money out there, we can go back to the EPA and get a bigger chunk and build that fund up.
Nice.
Yep.
So that you guys are getting directly from federal government, so then you'll be more of the pass-through entity.
very similar to the EDA.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Once it starts to the revolving phase, then it goes back to our standard package would increase the interest rate and all that stuff.
So is it the reporting, is it similar to the EDA, but just you're doing it to EPA? Or are they doing a lot? Is it a little?
Actually, I am not 100% sure on the reporting. I'm gonna have to dive into that a little bit further once we get going with Nate.
Yeah, Nate and Crystal, they've been doing all that reporting, so I guess we're not close enough to know exactly what that looks like, what they do.
I know that it is, I'm sure that it'll be similar, like semi-annual reporting until they're in the revolving phase and then annual after that. That's how I do it for the EDA, but.
And Niagara Falls has this similar fund with revolving, and they've been very successful. Once they got it, every year they get it replenished when they need it. So could be a great thing for the county. Could be a
Yeah,
great thing.
Niagara County.
Yep.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I do believe they have to spend it first in order for us to submit. the
Reimburse them.
receipts, and then EPA reimburses, well, EPA pays us and then we reimburse them.
That's a large housing project over on the river over here in
Uh-huh.
Jamestown that they've been working on forever. And that was a piece of it that they really had a hard time with the, financing for that.
Mhm.
Hard to get lending to do
That type of work.
environmental
Yeah.
stuff.
Nice. Awesome.
And then other than that, there's, as I mentioned, there's other influencing factors. We look at your pilots, we'll look at, the transactions, especially between you and the county, that can be, that's kind of an arm's length transaction in a way. So we kind of, get those agreements, make sure we understand it as we did last year, making sure they're federal or not. So
The ARPA money, the 4.8 that we got from the county of ARPA for Ripley, that won't be spent probably, we have until the end of 2026 to spend it. We did receive all of that from the county. So I expect that we'll probably end up spending it sometime this year.
And did they have any expectation on, since you're holding those funds on the cash management side of it, interest, or is that
No.
yours?
Interest free.
Yeah. We looked at that a little bit last year, I think, Rich, on the interest in it for that particular program. It was the typical interest was waived.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that was
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah, and again, being a contractor, not a sub-recipient, gave us a little more latitude as well.
Might not apply anyways, but
Yeah. Yeah,
So
they
that-
were having not that they had a hard time getting rid of it, but I give Mark a lot of credit for, following through and getting those funds that we really needed for these shovel-ready sites. He did a lot of work on that, and it's gonna definitely be money well spent for the county. I know that.
We're gonna, just a sidebar, we're doing a ARPA project summary report. 84 projects were funded through the county's 24.6 million. And we're doing a report and we're identifying every single project that was funded through the county and how that money was even leveraged. Jason's working on it with Justin and myself, and yeah, it's gonna be a nice
that's awesome.
report
Yeah.
that just says, this is what we did with the money.
Kind of showcase it.
Yeah,
So then We want to go to the next couple pages, audit strategy. Obviously, myself and Dave have been on the engagement for a number of years. Rhiannon Zink, who worked with you last year, she's back. She'll be on it. We added another individual to kind of do the internal control testing. So, we have a good team in place. We'll go through your controls, go through the, testing of cash receipts, disbursements, payroll, make sure we understand those processes. And then we get into what you really consider the audit, the substantive testing, looking at backup documentation, things like that. Doing our analytical tests and, kind of wrapping it up, taking it to the financial statements. We look at your prior comments, we review legal communications. So there's a lot of little things that go into it, but they all add to the final kind of product you receive in that financial statement. But it's really, at the end of the day, about the risk and where we need to focus our time. And, the big areas for you guys are those loan funds, especially because they're federal nature. So we do spend a lot of time on that. The pilots, we spend a lot of time on that. Well, it's not in and out for you guys. There's a lot of fiduciary responsibility for you there. So we do spend a lot of time on that. So we have to kind of hone our approach to look at the riskier areas and where there might be risk. And, really for you guys, you're a granting agency. So there's the risk. So we're looking at those items. That's where we spend the majority of our time. So timetable, we have our auditor's report, our 3 letters and the consolidated statements. We try to hit your March meeting with those. We have a governance letter and management letter that go with that. And then we also have the 990 for CREDC. So that is required to file in 990. Now that one we usually try to do sometime in the summer once things kind of quiet down. We do typically extend it. It's due May 15th, but historically we've extended it and tried to hit it in the summertime. So, our field work, I'm here this week. And a couple people will be on site today, so we might come down and see you a little bit. We'll probably be on site tomorrow some. I don't know if we'll need any other days. We'll kind of play it by ear as we go. And then, we meet with the audit committee. Typically we do that like the week before we go to the full board. And, the board meeting usually in March.
Yep.
When's your March board meeting? Does anybody know?
The 25th.
Typically what we like to do is we like to have a good draft and come to you guys sometime the week prior. Get the same group together and go over the financial statements in detail. So then when we go to the board meeting, that's more of a high level review of the financials.
Maybe get that.
Even the
Yeah.
week of the 10th, later in the 10th, I think, or the beginning of.
Yeah, it's sometime probably between the 10th and 25th would be good. I think by then we could have at least a decent draft.
The week of the 17th, are you thinking? The week before?
Which, yeah,
I think if we did it the week before, we'd probably want to do it Monday.
yeah, we'd want to,
17th.
if we did it the week before, we'd want it earlier, just so we're not scrambling to make some change on the weekend before or something.
Oh, you're talking about St. Patty's Day, are you? Okay.
Nothing to make you want to drink, right? Hopefully not.
I quit, Justin. I haven't had a drink in 15 months.
Yeah.
Staying strong.
So any questions for us while we're here?
Nope.
So we'll probably get together that week. We'll have a good draft to go over. We'll probably send some things to some of you prior to that to review. And Mark, we usually send you some of the footnotes so you can read through it.
I'll keep going through the share file.
Yeah, start taking stuff off. Yeah, and I think we've got a meeting scheduled today to kind of do our ESS where we get a couple staff together and kind of give them their game plan for the week. So, should be a good week. Hopefully we'll be down to see you and talk to you about some things.
Awesome.
Great, very good. Anything else, Rich, Shelby?
I think Shelby's gonna do an amazing job here at the IDA, Dave. She's very smart. She and Kayla, you'll be in good hands with them.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Looking
about-
forward to it.
Leave me out of that.
Sounds good.
Great. Is there any other business to come before the board? Or the committee? Okay, hearing none, we'll consider the finance committee meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.